Over to you now.
Thank you. So my slide should pop up shortly, I think. There we go. Look at that. It's professionally done in the back end there. So I'm going to talk to you guys all about some coaching skills that you can use in your own digital agency. Uh, these are things that most of us coaches use on agency leaders, but hopefully these are things that you can take away. They'll help you be better with your team. For those of you who don't know me, I run a digital agency coaching business called the OMG Center. We have a free community, and we work with digital agencies across the world, mostly in English-speaking places, because most British people only speak English, sadly. And we focus on building growth plans for digital agencies. So a little bit like the previous talk, we work sort of working backwards from the future. Um, and we're going to talk about some coaching stuff that you can do with your team. So coaching is a really great way to learn to lead. So coaching your team is a really good way that builds trust. It builds opportunities for future growth with your potential future leaders in your own business. And also, it gives you an opportunity to kind of step away from being on the business all the time, in the business all the time, sorry, and focus more on that business. Because by coaching, you can give people a bit more autonomy, a little bit more accountability, and you know that what they're gonna do with the empowerment you've given them via good quality coaching is probably better than you could do by watching them every single day. So it's one thing to make clear. I think there's a difference between leaders and managers. Managers do things right. They do right processes. They do right things in terms of getting things done with the team. But leaders do right things. So this is you want your people to follow you, not to the ends of the earth, hopefully, but you want them to be aligned with the vision and the values of the business. You want them to feel. Like they're part of the wider organization. Now, being a great leader means you need to maintain this, and part and parcel of that is to earn their trust through good coaching. And it isn't good enough to kind of follow a management checklist. It isn't good enough to kind of just tick boxes every single day with your team. So there's certain things that you can deploy. And initially, they start off as a bit kind of rigid and as a bit like a checklist, but eventually, over time, that kind of mental muscle grows, and your team really do notice the difference with you. So, what are these skills? They're in the book, so get the book. Barris, you'll want me to mention the book a few times. Book, 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 book. Get the agency growth book. Most of these are all written in here. I'm going to go through some of these now. So, the first one of these is listening. To be a great leader, you absolutely need to be a great listener. If you don't listen properly, you're not going to understand what's going on. You definitely don't have all the answers. That is a universal truth of all business leaders. Great leaders listen to their people. They listen to what they're saying, but also listen to what they're not saying as well. So being able to listen properly really does open up the doors to sort of black swan events. You can learn a hell of a lot from your team, from your clients, from your potentially from your competitors, if you listen to what they're saying. You've got to listen, because if you're assuming that you've got the answer right, the chances are at a certain point in time, a big, massive punch in the face from a business perspective is going to come. You're not going to know where it was coming from, and it probably could have been solved if you listened to people better. Now, listening isn't just kind of nodding and answering back and things like that. It's asking questions, and it's being curious. Curiosity didn't kill the cat, no matter what anyone says. May have killed some cats, but it didn't kill people. Um, if you ask well, you get more. If you ask curious, open questions with your team, you'll build trust with them. You'll have an opportunity to kind of create some open dialogue. The more your team trusts you, the more they'll come to you when they don't understand things. The more they'll come to you when they want to grow in their career. If your team are learning from you by being curious, they will do the same with their clients and maybe some subordinates in their departments. It allows you to kind of grow with them. they will realize that you actually care because you're asking lots of open questions, but they'll realize that there's a reason behind those questions because it uncovers opportunities for them and yourselves to really kind of flourish as the agency grows. This means essentially that as you're asking lots and lots of questions, you may end up building a nice level of trust, which allows you to kind of give, but also because your listening skills receive good feedback. Um, it's super easy to get into a mechanized kind of routine with feedback giving and receiving. Feedback absolutely shouldn't be um, you did a good job, thanks very much. It should be something that's very specific and objective. You shouldn't have emotion too much in the feedback that you give to your team. It should absolutely be actionable. So the feedback may well be good or poor, but when you're giving it to them in an objective way and being very specific about the things that you're talking to them about, it's very easy for them to come away from that knowing that there's no personal malice included in that. They've already trusted you a lot because you've listened well in the past. You've asked them lots of questions. And because you've given them some actionable opportunities inside that feedback, they're going to love being given more to do. Usually, the right kind of feedback that you give them, the better they receive it. If you've listened well and you've worked hard with them in terms of all of the curious questions, the kind of feedback that you can give is fantastic. Now, taking feedback is really hard. Personally, I find it really hard. Sorry, I don't know what everyone else thinks, but being told something wasn't quite right is really bad. I'd be that 2-year-old smacking his feet on the floor and things. But being able to take feedback is a really good indication of a good leader. If you can take feedback that isn't necessarily that you are perfect and this is the best thing ever, you're going to earn more trust with your team because they know that you can stretch a little bit in terms of taking things that aren't that great, but turning them into something good by asking curious questions again around how and why that could be better, where opportunities might lie. But if you are really good at taking feedback and actioning it, they will be better at taking feedback when you give it. And then the final thing to talk about here is to kind of hold yourself and your team to account. So consistency is absolutely key here when you're building some accountability in your teams. Building really good accountability with your teams is really, really hard. It feels like something that should be easy, checklists, reporting, timesheets, etc. But it really isn't easy at all. People need a reliable way to maintain traction. Most people like to know where they're going, how they're getting there, what the steps and the milestones are along the way. And without a good, reliable way to maintain traction in accountable processes and accountable tasks, it's really, really hard to do that. Now, if you're not actioning your own feedback, or you're not listening to them when they're giving you feedback, it's really, really tough to maintain any kind of reliability in that accountable processes that you might well build. It's really, really hard to do so. Teams, as much that they may not love hearing this, but they do love accountability. The more accountability you give people, the more you do need to listen, though. And that's listening for things you aren't necessarily hearing. The reason I say that is because you're giving on a sliding scale. The more accountability you give people, you need to make sure you measure it, but you're also giving them an opportunity to make mistakes. And if you're giving good feedback and you're asking the right questions along the way, then you're probably able to hold them to better account at the very end of a process or a task or a deliverable for a client. I hope I'm on time there for you, Barris. So thank you very much, everybody.